Almost 4 years ago, Google deviated from their well-worn flagship path, or at least it was well-worn at the time, and released the Pixel 3a and 3a XL. The mid-rangers provided all of the best bits of the flagship Pixel 3, but without the asking price to match. As the Pixel 3a and 3a XL are no longer officially supported by Google, we think it's time to reassess just how this duo changed the trajectory of Google in the smartphone space. Has it helped or has it hindered the growth of the Pixel series? This is our Pixel 3a postmortem. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. We often see Android OEMs cut corners to inhibit the experience with mid-range phones, but Google took a scalpel to the only areas that kept the price high on its flagship lines. The result was impressive in all of the right ways, and even the negatives can quickly be overlooked. One of the biggest compliments that you can give the Pixel 3a is that, at least visually, it's almost indistinguishable from the Pixel 3, at least at first glance. That's undoubtedly a testament to Google's efforts to provide at least the perception of a premium Pixel experience without the associated price tag. There's also the benefit of shared hardware traits that don't really diminish or cheapen the design principles introduced with its flagship lines. Apple's continued repackaging of old designs with the iPhone SE certainly puts this all into perspective. A very brief divergence occurred a year later, but the two-tone frosted look works surprisingly well when cheaper polycarbonate was utilised. Plastic doesn't age quite as gracefully without a case, but it's more durable than metal and glass in the long term. You can tell these cheaper materials have been used, but it's not to the detriment of the look and feel, which actually belies that lower entry price point as we've mentioned. The only unique trait to the brand new Pixel 3a at the time was a new purplish colour variant and slightly tuned power button hues, something that we'd love to see Google restore on newer models. Even the forehead and chin display bezels are home to front-facing speakers. There's absolutely no bathtub notch to contend with, which in many ways felt like a huge selling point upon the release of this duo. Google really nailed the screens here too. Both are rated at Full HD Plus and capped at 60Hz, but to add such a good and well-tuned OLED instead of an LCD means that the Pixel's always-on display features also bled down to the first affordable devices from the firm. Hardware feature parity was not expected, but it builds an all-important buyer trust. Although the Qualcomm Snapdragon 670 processor used here is a fairly sizable downgrade over the Snapdragon 845 using the Pixel 3, there is parity in the 4GB RAM or memory allocation, and this helped to keep things running smoothly. Shockingly so. The rear fingerprint scan is also fast and fluid, something that certain recent flagship Pixels haven't really been able to say. There's also the 3.5mm headphone port included here too, a relic of a time before ports were removed with excuses about IP ratings or even the admittedly excellent Pixel Buds A series joining the fore. Little did we know that even affordable phones later down the line would soon ditch this port entirely. When we start to look at the software, and without delving too deep into performance levels, at least today, which are impressive given the age in internals, Google's efforts in tuning modest hardware meant a flagship level software experience without the associated high entry price tag as a result of the internals. The added bonus as well with this device is day one software updates and monthly security patches, at least during its official support window. The landscape has changed since the release of the Pixel 3a, probably due to this device itself, but at a time when Samsung continued to fumble software updates and device support back in 2018 and 2019, the idea of a sub $500 smartphone with such a support window was actually almost unheard of. Android 12 is actually the final official OS update, and this was made available in September 2022 after launching with Android 9 Pie pre-installed on the 3A series. As of January 2023 though, updates ceased with the release of the June 2022 security patch. All in all, we have to say this isn't a bad run for this duo. And when you start to compare side by side with the Pixel 3, we think you'd be hard pressed to truly notice major performance differences. That said, this was no powerhouse, and it is certainly no powerhouse now, and even more underpowered as time progresses. As a daily device for texting, calling, photography, and other light tasks, it was the perfect platform to highlight Google's software tuning even to those modest internals. Getting all of the features that were more commonly associated with high-end Pixel phones, and with barely any aspect of a Pixel missing, is yet another reason that we loved the 3A the first time around, and in hindsight, it has really set the tone for the rest of the industry. What's interesting to note here is that whether it's hardware related or otherwise, the Pixel 3A actually didn't seem to suffer from quite as many software issues that its bigger brother the Pixel 3 did. This includes no great issues with the camera, at least with camera UI responsiveness, or even apps constantly being flushed from memory. Sure, the experience when running Android 12 isn't exactly top tier, but in perspective it still runs well given the hardware constraints. Many of the mid-rangers released back in 2019 really can't claim the same either. A bigger frustration that has been exacerbated over time, and was a little bit of a frustration when this device released though, is the lackluster 64GB storage capacity. With app sizes slowly ballooning over time, it would have been better to have a 128GB base model, and this was corrected with the launch of the Pixel 4a series over a year later. If you are insisting on grabbing a taste of Android 13 with these devices and persisting with the device themselves, then you might have to head though into the world of unofficial third-party ROMs. Lineage OS 20 was recently announced sans the Pixel 3a and 3XL officially, but there is a way to flash unofficial builds, and it means you can hold on to Google's first budget phone for a little while longer if you are insistent on rocking either device. So when it was officially confirmed that the camera setup on the Pixel 3a was actually going to be identical to the Pixel 3 series, it certainly raised a few eyebrows. For some, it probably felt like a kick in the teeth, but it was an absolute masterstroke on Google's part. The Sony IMX363 main sensor is certainly a little long in the tooth, but that 12 megapixel image processing unit is a very, very good addition. While we've seen the Pixel 6 and 6a ditch the camera sensor consistency, this was a true flagship system in a mid-range phone, and to see it used or utilised as the main sensor in the Pixel 6a still today puts it into perspective. It's also worth noting that no feature from the camera was missing, and this included the impressive night sight long exposure mode, top shot, plus the excellent portrait mode and superb capture of moving subjects. Although image processing took a little while longer than it did on the Pixel 3 due to the lower end internals, the end result and overall quality are practically identical and indistinguishable from one another. Despite a lack of lens variety as well, the solo shooter here is still impressive, and you're able to take photos in just about every scenario, despite the fact that it is just one solo lens available. I wouldn't say that Google's older handsets have aged badly though in the photographic department. That said, you can certainly see that the processing has altered slightly with each iteration. Video itself hasn't quite held up as well, but able to record 4K UHD 30fps video is a big bonus given the internals are quite modest. Most 2019 mid-range smartphones would cap at 1080p, and given the same flagship level camera system was utilised across the Pixel 3 and 3a series, it was an even more impressive inclusion, at least at the time. As I've mentioned as well, that paltry 64GB internal storage option, and with no way to expand or upgrade that storage, has always been a sore point. Offloading images to sites like Google Photos or even other cloud storage services, or then locally to your PC or Drive, was something we deemed necessary back at launch, and if you do hang on to this device any longer, it's going to be even more so. Although we do think it's unfair to look at an almost 4-year-old smartphone's lifespan, at least back at the release of the 3A and 3XL, the battery longevity surpassed even the flagship Pixel 3. It's probably due to that low power processor and some power management tweaks that did help push at least the 3A XL into the upper echelons of Android lifespan way back in 2019. 7 hours of screen on time over multiple days was possible, and something I used to see quite a lot back at launch. You'll be lucky to attain even half of that today, given natural battery degradation. The 18-watt maximum charge speeds via cable do seem slow by today's standards, but seemed solid during its initial launch window. A lack of wireless charging did feel like a missed opportunity on Google's part. Alas, it's another relic of the time, and of course there were some cost-cutting measures put in place. It also feels a little unfair to complain about this, given that the Pixel A series still lacks the ability to charge via Qi wireless pad or even the Pixel stand. Maybe future iterations will finally allow for wire-free charging. We can only hope for now. So to summarise, in many ways, the Pixel 3a and 3 XL absolutely stole some of the limelight from the Pixel 3. It's not often that any manufacturer absolutely nails their first attempt at a new segment, but Google most certainly did, probably in ways that the Pixel series could never really manage, or at least the flagship series could never really manage. The price point and feature set mean that this duo felt fully fleshed out in ways that at least the Pixel series hadn't quite managed at the time, especially as they were constantly playing catch up to the best in the industry. While Google of old struggled to break into that high-end smartphone space, the firm's first mid-range effort absolutely nailed every single fundamental and then some. In a previous revisit back in late 2019, I called the Pixel 3a XL specifically the everyman Android, and with each and every A-series release, I stand by that. Mid-range phones were nothing new in 2019, but by repackaging everything that we expected from Google's flagship experience without overly watering things down and cutting too many corners, it led to the birth of what is arguably the more enticing made by Google smartphone series to most prospective buyers out there. All of the flavour, but less of the fluff. Just a pure Pixel experience, sans the high price tag. With the Pixel 6a being more or less the culmination of the A series, at least at this stage in time, and the Pixel 7a likely bringing more upgrades, those handsets will have the Pixel 3a and the 3a XL to thank for truly paving the way for their success. So that's the Pixel 3a and 3a XL. Google is still slowly finding its feet in that high-end space and making good on a lot of promises with the Pixel 6 through to the Pixel 7 and hopefully the Pixel 8 series, but the firm's affordable offerings are still among the best packages for the money, especially given their software update schedules. Do you agree though with our sentiments or have an opinion of your own? Let us know down in the comment sections below. Hopefully you've enjoyed though this retrospective look at probably one of the most important made by Google phone series to date. Until next time though, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.